establishment of a Palestinian state. This has supposedly been a top priority. Okay, all of history shows this is not true. When Egypt was in control of the Gaza Strip from 1948 to 1967, was there an independent Palestinian state? Of course, the answer is no. When Jordan was in control of Judea and Samaria from 1948 to 1967, was there an independent Palestinian state? No. Today, there could be an independent Palestinian state in Jordan, and the Hashemite dynasty says no.
What a retarded set of... So it is true that initially they didn't give a fuck about the Palestinians. That's true, because they wanted to expand their own interests. However, post-73, post-67, regardless of whether or not you feel like initially the Arab states were bad actors or not, which they were insofar as guarding Palestinian interests, now the people do genuinely believe that, like, well, at the very least, they don't like the fact that Israel could control all the land. Jordan is not about to carve up their country. Considering the majority of Jordanians are already Palestinian, they're not about to carve up their country to make another country out of it. What an absurd statement, but...
Despite the fact that the vast majority of the population of Jordan actually is Palestinian.
Yeah.
Not only are the surrounding Middle Eastern states uninterested in a Palestinian state, they don't want one because they know that it will be a terror haven. The big reason that so many Arab countries, Muslim countries in the region don't want to take in Palestinian refugees is because they are afraid it will destabilize their country, and they are right. It destabilized Jordan when the PLO was located there in the early 1970s is a terror haven. The big reason that so many Arab countries, Muslim countries in the region don't want to take in Palestinian refugees is because they are afraid it will destabilize their country, and they are right.
Yeah, because it would be taking in, one, you're taking in millions of people all of a sudden that now you have to figure out how to deal with. Two, if the Palestinian problem were ended and they were taken by other countries, I don't know what that would mean for UNRWA funding. So it might be that all of that funding disappears. I don't know if there'd be some transition period or whatever. That would be a significant thing to figure. And three, your people, I don't know what the appetite is on the, what do they call it, the Arab street? I don't know politically if the regimes would be survivable if the people saw all of their Arab leaders basically turning their back on the Palestinians and Israel, saying like, okay, guys, we are just going to completely and totally give this up and completely and totally acquiesce to Jewish hegemony in the area. I don't know if the people would survive that, but it's hard to know people's opinions in the Middle East because they're not democracies. So, but
it destabilized Jordan when the PLO was located there in the early 1970s, leading to the full-scale expulsion of tens of thousands of Palestinians as well as the PLO. Lebanon, which used to be a Christian state, was completely overrun by the PLO and turned into a hellhole. There are Syrian refugee camps that still contain Palestinians because no matter how hellish Syria is, whoever has been in charge there, whether it's Assad or now whether it's HTS, they're not particularly interested in fighting another front war with a radicalized Palestinian population. In the aftermath of the Gulf War, Kuwait expelled tens of thousands of Palestinians who had sided with Saddam Hussein. So the idea that anyone in the Middle East is deeply interested in the establishment...
Yikes. That is an unbelievably bullshit statement. I've never heard that in my entire life. The reason why, I believe it was 200,000 Palestinians were expelled from Kuwait. It wasn't because the Palestinians sided with Saddam Hussein. I believe it was because that Arafat publicly threw his lot in with Saddam Hussein. And then I think as a result of that, they expelled all of the Palestinians from Kuwait afterwards. It was a lot of them. Was it 200,000? I might make that. Hold on. Palestinian expulsion, Kuwait. 357,000? How many left? Damn, it was hundreds of thousands of them. But I don't believe it was because the Palestinians themselves sided with Saddam. It was because Arafat did. Why Arafat backed Saddam? What a stupid gamble. What a idiot. His whole movement, he lost so much moral authority on this as well, I think, to throw his lot in with Saddam, who was invading Kuwait for bullshit reasons. But regardless, what a piece of shit.
Establishment of a Palestinian state is a lie made up by Westerners. And Middle East, and in the aftermath of the Gulf War, Kuwait expelled tens of thousands of Palestinians who had sided with Saddam Hussein.
And it was hundreds of thousands, but okay.
So the idea that anyone in the Middle East is deeply interested in the establishment of a Palestinian state is a lie made up by Westerners. And Middle Eastern states have gone along with that lie because it's been a convenient way of shifting blame to Israel for their own internal failures and of prying concessions out of Westerners. But it was always a lie. And Donald Trump knows it's a lie. And that's why he has said repeatedly that the Saudis, the Egyptians, the Jordanians, they don't really care about a Palestinian state. That is a side quest.
The leaders don't really care at this point, but the people probably still do. Even if it's not explicitly a Palestinian state, the idea that all of them would just be expelled and kicked out of those lands, I don't think the people would be okay with that. But
other conventional wisdom, that the way that you upset the Arab street is when you acknowledge reality. That if you acknowledge reality, the Arab street will go wild. It will be gigantic war in the Middle East. The most obvious example of this being the that is a side quest. Other conventional wisdom, that the way that you upset the Arab street is when you acknowledge reality. That if you acknowledge reality, the Arab street will go wild. It will be gigantic war in the Middle East. The most obvious example of this being the conventional wisdom that if the United States actually moved its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, the eternal capital of Israel and the Jewish people, that if that were to happen, then the entire Middle East would go up in flames. And it turns out nothing happened. Nothing. Because that was a reality. And acknowledging reality on the ground is smarter than pretending reality away.
Embassy moved to Jerusalem, USA. The embassy opened at its Jerusalem location on May 14th, 2018. Palestinian border riots, Wikipedia, the Great March of Return. started 30th of March, 2018. Crazy how close these were in time. Part of the reason why these border riots started, I believe, is because people were feeling increasingly desperate because it wasn't just the opening of this embassy in Jerusalem that was agreed to. I believe there were also discussions about removing funding from UNRWA as well. Donald Trump had made clear that he had incredibly strong support for Jerusalem, that they didn't give a fuck about any of the Palestinian issues. And part of this acknowledging the moving of the embassy to Jerusalem and super acknowledging the full city of Jerusalem as being part of Israeli territory definitely stoked tensions. I believe arguably was one of the things that was moving. Oh, it even says it here at the bottom here. The U.S. recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Part of the reason why recognizing Jerusalem as the capital was a big deal is because Jerusalem, it was a contested city, although I think at this point, or as of a while ago actually, I think Israel has formally annexed both sides of it and now some of the surrounding areas as well. But so to say that there were no repercussions from this, that's a clever rewriting of history, but okay, good job.
To Jerusalem, the eternal capital of Israel and the Jewish people, that if that were to happen, then the entire Middle East would go up in flames. And it turns out nothing happened. Nothing. Because that was a reality. And acknowledging reality on the ground is smarter than pretending reality away. Similarly, the conventional wisdom said that any move to acknowledge territorial sovereignty by Israel in disputed areas, like, for example, the Golan Heights, would end with further war. Wrong. Not only is that untrue, it is the reverse. When Israel has been able to defend territory, the world gets more peaceful, not less. The world will be more peaceful because Israel is currently occupying the other side of Mount Hermon in Syria rather than, for example...
No one cares about the Golan Heights, and no one cares about Syria. Fuck Syria and fuck the Golan Heights.
HTS or Al-Qaeda. Other conventional wisdom. What the Palestinians really want is peace and a thriving democracy. There is zero evidence adduced to this idea. None. In fact, every single piece of evidence is precisely the contrary. The Palestinians, by every piece of polling data ever done, do not, in fact, support a thriving democracy. They do not, in fact, support a quote-unquote two-state solution. They do not support peace with Israel. In fact, their entire raison d'etre, the entire reason for the establishment of a Palestinian people, which was an agglomeration of a variety of people from different areas who over time accreted in British Mandate Palestine largely because of the upward economic trajectory created by Jews who'd been moving in. The entire raison d'etre was the disestablishment of a possible Jewish state there. So to give up that aspiration would be to recognize a thing that is unrecognizable for the vast majority of Palestinians. There is yet to be a single poll ever showing that Palestinians favor a two-state solution with Israel and the Palestinians living side by side. Yet the conventional wisdom likes to pretend that's not the case and then bang their head consistently against a wall and then yell at the Israelis for being so intransigent about not wanting to exterminate themselves. Donald Trump.
I mean, yeah, that's why you have to make the conditions and you have to make like a huge deal to do it. Like people also didn't think that Egypt would ever be able to sign peace with Israel, and yet it happened, or that any other state would be able to sign peace with Israel, but it has happened. So
Trump does not accept that conventional wisdom. He recognizes that Israel is not going away. Other conventional wisdom, that the Palestinians must never be allowed to leave a rubble-strewn, war-torn area, even if they want to, because somehow it facilitates peace to keep would-be refugees in an unlivable situation for a decade, with no infrastructure, with no jobs, with no economy other than the trash foreign aid that has been used historically by terrorist groups to build terror tunnels and stock up on weaponry. That was the conventional wisdom. The conventional wisdom is that the best plan in the Gaza Strip was to pour billions of dollars into Hamas to facilitate humanitarian aid, which went directly to building terror tunnels. The only infrastructure built there, the only infrastructure that has been built there over the course of the last 15 years. And somehow the conventional wisdom...
That is an issue. Hamas is not good. The Gaza Strip stuff was not good. That is true.
...was give it more money, more air, make sure that there are more... Why do you think Egypt shut the border? Why do you think the Rafah crossing is closed? That is not because of the Jews, that is because of the Egyptians. Finally, the conventional wisdom says that you cannot facilitate population movement in this area. Now I just have a question. Why is this the only area on earth where even if people want to leave, you can't facilitate population movement? Israel not only facilitated the population movement of Jews out of Gaza, it forced people who didn't want to leave out of Gaza in 2005. Literally took cities filled with 8,000 Jews and removed them forcibly with Israeli soldiers. It turned out...
Some Jews are super traumatized and ass-pained by that, by the way. You might be one of them.
That according to the conventional wisdom, the only people who can be forcibly removed from a particular area in this particular area are Jews. And the people who certainly cannot be moved under any circumstances are Palestinians living between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. Those people can't move at all. It doesn't matter if Kuwait kicks them out, or Jordan kicks them out, or Lebanon kicks them out, or Egypt refuses to take them. It doesn't matter whether they live in refugee camps in Syria. None of that makes a difference. It doesn't matter if literally hundreds of thousands or even millions of people are forced out of Syria due to civil conflict. And so they end up in Turkey or even in Europe. That's all fine and dandy. But the minute...
I don't think any of that is fine and dandy, but okay. But also, Syrians have a state. This is such a disingenuous comparison. Syrians have a state. There's not a contention that if they leave, they're going to lose their state or the Syrian state's going to disappear. Whereas for the Palestinian issue, if enough of them leave, then they do lose their claim, and then Israel can just annex it is the fear, right?
Anybody says that people who even want to leave the Gaza Strip because they don't wish to live in the rubble of Khan Yunis under the thumb of Hamas, then all of a sudden the conventional wisdom says, no. They must be forced to remain. Listen, what's happening in the Gaza Strip is a challenge, but you've got your own challenges if you are an employer. Research shows one of the biggest challenges, number one, you can equal opportunity or ignored all of myself. I visited the campus, great people, wonderful faculty. Go check them out, gcu.edu. Okay, here's the thing. Trump has ignored all of this conventional wisdom because it's wrong and because it's stupid. And Donald Trump thinks outside the box. Here are Donald Trump's generalized premises when it comes to the Middle East. 1, intractable problems are, wait for it, intractable, and they're not